Hi everyone, today I want to take some time to talk about the difficulty and leveling changes that are coming in the expansion. We're gonna be able to try this out on the PTR on Wednesday. I'm ready to jump in and see how this is, but I also want to give my feedback and my thoughts on this. I was actually going to make such a feedback video about this topic, but here we are, and we had a campfire chat already discussing all the stuff for the expansion, so I will have to kind of mix it up a little bit. A quick recap, if you haven't seen a campfire chat or forgotten, well, there is a new difficulty system and a new leveling system that is coming in the expansion. TLDR, it's basically like Diablo 3, if you know that, where you have difficulty selections and no longer like a progression through the world tiers as much. So previously we have world tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and you go to higher world tiers, so you unlock better items, you unlock higher level monsters. This is no longer be the case. We're now gonna have monsters that are always at our own level, and instead you boost those monsters with higher difficulty settings. So they become, you know, more HP, more damage, they become faster and more aggressive and these kind of things. So they talked about this a bit on the campfire chat. TLER though, you fight more difficult monsters, you get more stuff and more XP. So there will be a reward for doing difficult content in the form of more efficiency. So this is kind of how that works in Diablo 3, pretty much exactly the same way. There is nothing that is locked behind certain difficulties anymore, at least come Torment 1. So Torment 1 is like the endgame difficulty that you start in once you reach maximum character level, which now is 60, and then you can progress through Torment 2, Torment 3, Torment 4 as you grow stronger, and then every time you get, for example, more ancestral drop rate, or more material drop rate, or just more items in general, and these kind of things. There's nothing that you can only get in one or the other, besides maybe achievements and cosmetics or something like that. I imagine there might be, you know, certain titles and rewards, but in terms of character progression, there is no need to do this, really. So what does that mean actually for how the game works? And why is it, in my opinion, a better system than before? Well, I want to give you one example of a run I have actually decided to do. That was literally on the day of the campfire, before the campfire, where I just had this random idea, hey, let's make a level 1 rogue and just do both capstones in a row on hardcore. So that's what I've done here. I've literally just crafted a set of gear for level 1, tempered it, imprinted it, so, you know, I had like some random level 1 items, the yellows, and some legendaries I found. And I equipped it, and then I went there and did exactly this run. So we went into a capstone at level 1, we killed the curator after 5 minutes, and yeah, then we went to Elias. That's what I did. I literally completely skipped world tier 3 and world tier 2 and world tier 1 basically, and went straight to world tier 4. And that character, wearing all of those items, is still alive at level 78 right now, by the way. So that's the thing. And this is definitely showing us that there is a bit of like a need for some updates, in my opinion. You'll actually able to see this run very soon. I will upload this run because it's just kind of like a fun little thing here. But to give you like a little spoiler, this is what the Elias fight looked like here at my level 20 rogue wearing level 1 items. So I think in general, this difficulty progression system overhaul was really needed at this point, with all of these, like, you know, extra power creep and like extra just progression steps that we have also received in our character like growth. We now have temperers, we now have way better aspects, we have uniques, you can get them at low levels, we can prepare gear for lower characters. At 35 you can equip mythics if it's your twink, you know, all this stuff, and it all leads to a scenario where leveling is just like ridiculously easy effectively, and there is not really much to challenge yourself with outside of what I just showed you, with just going to world tier 4 very early or something like that. And then very quickly, everything just becomes very trivial as soon as you actually wear sacreds and ancestral items. So I think that in general, we are moving towards a way better difficulty system here. I would have expected maybe a little bit more nuance, let's say, and a little bit more innovation when it comes to how they would shift things in Diablo 4, but it has actually worked relatively well in Diablo 3, I think. I've played Diablo 3 for basically a decade, very seriously, and I never really had, let's say, a gripe with the difficulty system. So yeah, there's that. And I also expect that in Diablo 4, at least compared to Diablo 3, we're probably gonna see a lot more nuance or a lot more finesse with the like balancing of those difficulty systems. it sounds like the developers have certainly intended that it will be a progression step going from each difficulty to the next. And okay, the first difficulties, the leveling difficulties, when you get to 60, are, you know, kind of easy to go through, I guess, as long as you are strong enough to actually reach those pit tiers here. And then you have Torment 1, you see there's a much bigger jumps. This is only jumps of 5 tiers, and then it's jumps of 15 tiers. So there's a lot more scaling going on that you will have to unlock in the late game in order to go to the next Torment difficulty. And I think that's actually really good. It sounds like the Torment 4 difficulty is going to be something very high-end, something that most people will probably never even get to. And those people that do might not even be the most efficient being at that Torment 4 difficulty. Maybe you can unlock the 65 and then go to Torment 4, but you just realize, you know, everything is too slow, I'm not really, you know, succeeding, I'm dying too much or something like that. Maybe you're only going to do certain things on Torment 4, like for example, tormented boss rotations. If you have someone who's like a really strong boss killer in your party, then you might want to go to Torment 4 and to do it on that difficulty just to get more loot out of your boss mats. So I talked about that, for example, you get more stuff from the bosses, but they cost the same. So that is certainly an incentive to go to Torment 4 early and try to do those boss rotations. But outside of that, I don't really see that many like extra efficiency gains if you can't handle the difficulty easily. So I think it will be actually much better compared to what it is now, with World Tier 4 is kind of like the highest. And we have been asking for something like a World Tier 5. I made a suggestion many times as well myself, where, for example, we would have some very high-end challenge, or, you know, something like the Mind Cages did in the end, where we can just, like, you know, raise the difficulty of everything by quite a bit for post-level 100 progress characters, because there is actually a lot of power growth at level 100, and the monsters in World Tier 4 didn't scale at all, like in the current game. So that was kind of a problem, and we always just had, you know, just the pit, basically. That was any kind of challenge at this point. And now we actually have everything that becomes a challenge. So your Helltides, your Whispers, everything is going to be much more relevant, and I think a lot more fun to play with. Another added perk that I see with this system is also that we don't really have to change our builds all that much, I think. Since they're nerfing boss HP, meaning that we just generally don't have to go all in on single target damage anymore, hopefully. Like, first of all, this will make a lot more builds a lot more viable when it comes to higher end content. And secondly, with bosses nerfed, we just have like a bit more of a streamlined difficulty across the board, I guess. Where, okay, you blast down everything and then you go to the boss, and the boss is not like some 5 minute slog, but maybe you just kill him in like half minute, 1 minute, or I don't know, something like that on a high difficulty, and that is okay, I think. And this is just gonna feel a lot better, and we don't have to make these variants where, you know, for example, there's like the Helltide Omega speed setup, because in Helltide everything just explodes as soon as you look in their direction. And then you have the pit, where you have bosses that have like dozens of billions of life or something like that, and you need like literally 1,000 times more DPS in order to kill anything. So now all of that just comes way closer together, and you can just take your build, you know, without really making adjustments, and then you go do your Whispers, you go do your Helltides, you go do the pit. And of course there might be some tweaks you can do, maybe you want to, you know, change setup a tiny bit, but it's not going to be like now where, you know, let's say you play a Sorc and suddenly for Helltides you go and put in the teleport enchant, you also put on your teleport boots, and then you also have the extra amulet that has like mobility skill cooldown reduction tempered, and then you can actually fly for Helltides. No, I think that generally the, you know, speed of these, like, you know, outdoor farming activities, for example, will probably go down because the difficulty is way higher, and you just take literally the same build and just play it anywhere. So I'm really looking forward to that. There will be like a much more streamlined progression with your build, where it's not like, oh man, yeah, I also have to save those 5 items so I can farm Helltide more efficiently, and then I also need my real setup for the pit. Oh yeah, also here's a bossing setup for the tormented boss rotations, so I have to swap those 3 things around. So I found that kind of annoying myself in the past, and the promised armory is certainly going to help with that, but it doesn't really fix the core issue of it, which is just, it's kind of annoying to actually make all those setups, actually, you know, work on all these items, masterwork these items, and so on. You always have to, like, you know, keep them around, keep them in the back of your head. So yeah, I think this is actually going to be way better with this system, where you just have like a kind of expected difficulty setting for everything. At the very least, this is how I'm going to plan making my builds at least, and we'll see if that is going to be successful. But I expect that, yeah, you just make a setup, you progress through the different steps of making a build. You know, you start getting your aspects, then you start getting your uniques, then you start getting mythics, you masterwork all your stuff, and there's going to be like, you know, these stronger and stronger versions of that build that you unlock. But it's not going to be this constant like, okay, I have to do, you know, like a shadow imbuement setup for my rogue so I can farm Helltide, and then I do the poison version so I can actually kill bosses and so on. It's just going to be kind of like a streamlined one version of a build, and it will do what it does. And that is about it. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Now, how will all of this actually kind of like tie together and feel when you play the game? Well, I guess we'll learn on Wednesday when the PTR goes live, because then we'll actually understand, okay, how is the leveling scaling now? How do the monsters feel? How are the difficulties? What is a good build? What is a bad build? And so on. We have no idea really how long it will take to reach level 60, how long it will take to reach Paragon 200 or 300 or something like that. So I expect that actually reaching like the end of the leveling process is going to be quite a lot longer than, let's say, leveling one character from 1 to 100 currently. At least I would do that if I was the devs, because Paragon are shared among your characters. So if you play multiple builds, then you can very easily reach the maximum Paragon at some point, I suppose, or at least get close to it. But I don't think they want you to just reach Paragon 300 instantly on your first character, unless you're like a super hard grinder and you go ham for like multiple days or something like that. So I would not really expect to have all those Paragon points, but I've also been working on Paragon setups and like builds for Season 6. I made a video about some of the rogue stuff I've been working on, for example. And it turns out that you don't actually need 300 Paragon points for everything. It's just like, okay, you need something like 150 to 200 or so to kind of like get most of the important stuff online, get your glyphs, get all the legendary nodes, and then you just kind of start picking up pretty much whatever that barely does anything. So this is what I noticed. And actually, if, for example, let's say around 200 Paragon is very easily reachable, similar to, let's say, 1 to 100 now, or somewhere along those lines, then yeah, it's not going to be so bad, I believe. Personally, I'm also not sure if I'm going to go all the way to maximum Paragon level on my first character. I guess we'll see how long it will take. Again, this might be something that we could achieve on the PTR, or at least understand and see how long it will take on the PTR. So we'll see, depending on how much we're going to blast there. But on the PTR, we're also going to try out a lot of different builds. There's not going to be that much grinding, like a season start, for example. So it's going to be, yeah, not really the same. But for now, yeah, this is the plan at least. I also kind of like the idea that, especially when you level alts, you're gonna get a lot more out of that, because you will probably way more easily go to the higher tiers way earlier. So let's say you already played Season 6 a bit and you have, you know, a bunch of materials, you have aspects unlocked, you have maybe a few mythics lying around, and then you just make your second character, and instead of like leveling on hard and then maybe eventually switching to expert, where, you know, maybe you found some nice upgrades along the way, you're gonna straight up just start on expert at level 1, you start blasting and one-shotting everything, and then at level 50 you can switch to penitent, and you're gonna get some mega XP multiplier, and you're gonna do it like 3 times faster than on your first character or so. Yeah, you can be quite a lot faster on your alts than on your first character as well in the live game, but again, we always have this problem that stuff just kind of becomes very trivial, combat becomes non-existent effectively because you just one-shot everything. And it just kind of doesn't feel like that Diablo 4 does what it does best, in my opinion, which is actually like really good and smooth combat. So having maybe like a slightly slower pace with like an incentive to go for higher difficulties would at least be much more fun to myself. I'm not sure about you guys, but I really enjoyed actually this bit slower meta that we had in the earlier seasons. So right now it's just kind of like you rush through and everything just kind of explodes. Some people like that. I don't hate it, I'd say, but I found that it was kind of trivializing some of the achievements that Diablo 4 has made as a game, I'd say. With the combat system, the monster design, the skill design, a lot of builds just kind of like stop being viable as well when the meta is to just one-shot everything. You know, anything that has like dots or, you know, standing still, like with Incinerate, all this stuff just can never be competitive if the builds are just intended to just blast down entire screens with one button, for example. So I hope that with this extra difficulty scaling, we will also have more opportunities to actually have such builds shine a little bit more, that are a bit slower paced, that need a bit of more of a setup, you know, like something like a combo point rogue with poisons or so. These are these examples that just kind of have form behind. in you know, such a very fast-paced gameplay scenario. So hope that will also shift a little bit. Now, I understand that a lot of people are not really as try-hard sweaty as I make it out to be right now, and you know, I have also leveled slow builds and I enjoyed it myself anyway. But I think it is important that we don't always end up with exactly the same combos, with exactly the same skills every single season, just because, you know, they work the best in how the game works. And we don't really have room for other like those other skills even to ever be competitive. Even no matter how much you buff them, they will just kind of be slower paced and thus not really competitive. And I think that's a problem in the long term. And I feel like whenever I start, you know, let's say a new rogue, it's always like this, okay, you go Shadow Imbuement, you just blast down the entire screen. Sure, I can do this with various core skills, but yeah, maybe there's like something more as well that we could be exploring here. And we have gotten some meta shifts lately with, for example, Aerostorm's Rogue or so, but I guess you understand the point that I'm trying to make here. With like the super fast pace and the kind of like low monster difficulty, it always gravitates towards the same combos that we're trying to use here. So all in all, I gotta say, I'm very optimistic about those changes. I think they are definitely fixing a lot of problems that Diablo 4 has seen in the, let's say, recent months. And even though the game has gotten a lot better, I definitely felt that an overhaul here was needed, and I'm quite glad that it's happening already in just the first expansion, after, like, you know, all those big changes that we have received in the last seasons. So I gotta say kudos, and I'm very excited to see how it feels. If this is done well, I think this is gonna be actually a pretty amazing system for Diablo 4. So that's my 2 cents about it. Let me know what you think. But overall, yeah, again, it depends on the exact scaling. It depends on, you know, how rewarding is it to go to the higher tiers? Is it actually worth kind of challenging yourself? And of course, you know, it's an RPG. It will always be about being fast, being efficient, about, you know, speed farming, much more than like bashing your head against the wall. I don't expect that we're gonna get to the point where, you know, everyone like just rushes into penitent difficulty, or, you know, everyone just bashes their head against the wall until they can enter Torment 4, and then you fight every single elite for like half a minute or something like that. That will never really be the meta unless somehow they made some ridiculous like rewards multipliers that you have to use and you have to go there. But realistically, the way this usually works is that, you know, you go to the next difficulty as soon as you can, you know, kind of handle it well, and then it starts becoming efficient. So if you, like, you know, go from blasting down elite packs in 3 seconds to, you know, fighting elite packs for 20 seconds, that will almost certainly not be the way to do it. So I can tell you as much, at least based on the decades, I guess, at this point of ARPG experience that I have. That is usually not how it works. So this means that generally you're gonna still experience this kind of like fast-paced action that we are used to, but I guess it will go slightly slower depending on where exactly you are in the progression step. You know, heading towards the next torment difficulty, for example, you know, there will be, of course, this power growth between the torment tiers as well, that, you know, you are in torment 1 and then you get stronger, and then you're not quite there for torment 2. So obviously, you know, you kind of feel yourself speeding up, and then you go to torment 2, it gets slower again a little bit, and then you speed up again, and then you go to torment 3, and then you get speedier again. So this is kind of how I expect that to go, and it's always going to be like this kind of like, you know, kind of wave of going faster and slower a little bit until, you know, you reach this comfortable high-end position, I guess, where, you know, the end of the journey in Torment 4 with like your GG set up. So this is what I hope to see, at least. When I look back at Diablo 3, then I gotta say they did have a very similar system, but they also did it much, much worse than I think it will work here, just because they had these ridiculous power jumps that so far we have not received in Diablo 4, and I hope we will never get them. Like, you know, Hades gift set that just instantly gives you like, you know, 10 extra difficulty tiers of power, basically. So you went from like, you know, Torment 5 straight to like Torment 14, and then you had like a few more small things that you find on the way, but, you know, immediately you would just fight monsters that are like literally 10,000 times stronger or something like that. And it was pretty ridiculous in Diablo 3. At some point the power creep was insane. The set items were ridiculous, the numbers on the items. So that was not really well executed. And they had this ridiculous jump in their efficiency as well. Like when you got lucky, on like the first hour or two of the season, then you could literally skip a day or something that other people that were unlucky and had to grind through in order to eventually get their big item that boom suddenly gives them this plus 10 tiers of difficulty. So I don't think this is what we're gonna see here, and this is also what the devs talked about, that there should be, large jumps in difficulty. It will take a while to get to the next step, and then it will take a while to get to the next one, and so on. And you can also see how this works in Diablo 4. There's a much longer progression with your character. You have to get the aspects, then the uniques, then the mythics. You have to find the ancestrals, find the great affixes. You have to masterwork your stuff. So there's like this, very small incremental steps of progression, and then it's also like these really big jumps. And these jumps are just not as large as they used to be in Diablo 3. So I think that there will be, multiple of those kind of like bigger jumps that you have to accumulate in order to even get from like Torment 1 to Torment 2. And then the same again from Torment 2 to Torment 3, and so on. So if that is the case, then I think this will feel really good, because in between those difficulty brackets, you will actually feel the progression of your character getting stronger. You're going to start blasting down those bosses easier. You're going to, just go faster. And then again, as what I described earlier, you're going to go to the next difficulty. You're going to feel that the efficiency ramps up, and you're going to be a bit slower than before, and then you're going to go faster again. So yeah, for now, this is just kind of like a lot of hypothetical, expectations that I have here. But as I said, with the right balancing, I think it's going to be really good. I'm going to keep you guys updated about what will happen on the PTR, so stay tuned. On Wednesday, I'll be logging in, I'll be blasting non-stop basically, and I will actually start a one character, I think, to try out this new leveling, and we'll see how it will compare to the live server. For now, this is what I got here. I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts behind this, of how it all works and what I know from Diablo 3, which actually worked very similarly, but just with much worse execution, I think. So, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.